So the April book of the month is Gaps and Gains. So our team, we pick a book to read every month, or sometimes we may skip a month depending on if there's a lot of projects or things going on that month, like whether it's my speaking schedule or something going on, we may skip a month. But this month we have been reading the book Gaps and Gains. And I think it is a phenomenal book because it really highlights something that a lot of business owners, and I think just people in general, tend to really struggle with. We tend to focus on the thing that we want, the destination that we want to arrive at. And a lot of times we focus on that so much that we start to realize that there is a gap between where we are today and where we want to be. And a lot of times, if you focus on that gap too much, it starts to make us depressed. It starts to lower our energy. It starts to really pull us down. So what I like about the book is it really takes that whole concept head on. And it says, instead of focusing so much on the gap, how about we start focusing on the gain? How about we start looking at, hey, where are we today? Where were we when we started? And what kind of progress have we made? Because when we get good at being able to celebrate the progress that we have made, it begins to give us more motivation to keep moving forward in the right direction. And I think that that is something that I really need to work on myself because, I'm an accountant. We work with law firms and business owners and helping them understand the finance side of their business. And a lot of times, accountants are very, very guilty of failing to stop and celebrate the progress. For example, like we started working with a law firm a couple of years ago. And when this law firm came to us, they were in a pretty bad spot because they had just lost almost $700,000 in their business in the previous year. And they were following a strategy that didn't pan out to be the great strategy. And I would say they were trying to figure out like, hey, we've been funding this business on loans and we need to really turn things around. And so we started working with them and really laying out some forecasting and planning. And we started really making some necessary adjustments. And after a year of working with us, when we compared it to the prior year, like, hey, great news. We've gotten out of this cycle of losing money, and this year, hey, you finally made a profit, and it wasn't a very big profit number. And they were like, well, that isn't a very big profit number. And we looked at it and we said, hey, let's stop and take a look at this. Last year, you were $700,000 below zero. This year, you are actually back into the green. So although the profit you made this year didn't really look like an amazing number, if you compare it to where you came from, like that's a very big deal because you went from losing about 40 something plus $1,000 a month to now you're actually making about $31,000 a month. And it took some time for us to make that shift and put those things in place. But what I realized is as we started to help the client understand the progress that they had made, what they began to realize is like, you know what? This is a really big deal because, we looked at, at the time we were looking at this, we looked at that same month, the prior year. We were like, this same time last year, you lost $80,000 in that month. Now this year, you're showing a profit in the same month a year later by $51,000 in that month. And I was just like, hey, that is a really, really big change. You went from losing $81,000 to making a profit of $51,000. And by learning to celebrate the gain over time, what it did is it gave her the motivation to be able to continue moving forward in the right direction. And the same thing is true in every area of our business. Like I remember when I did a hike earlier this year with a friend, I flew out to Arizona and we did a desert hike and we did a 21.5-mile hike in the Sonora Preserve in the Arizona desert outside of Scottsdale. And I will tell you, there were parts of that hike that I was like, man, I don't know if I can keep going because I'm looking at where we are and I'm looking at where we gotta go. And it was definitely demoralizing. It was a huge mental challenge to just keep going. But at certain points when we stopped and my friend helped me, he said, man, look at where we came from. Like, look at all the terrain that we accomplished. And I turned around and I looked back and I said, man, we've gone through like 3 or 4 different mountain peaks. And just looking at the landscape of everything that we had already accomplished and conquered, it gave me the motivation to keep going to finish out the rest of the hike. Now, I will tell you, it wasn't like all of a sudden like, hey, all of my energy came back, but it did give me enough motivation to say, hey, you know what? I can keep going and keep making progress. So one of the things that I really loved about this book is it highlighted that concept and how we all need to stop really stressing so much about the gap, but also to keep in mind what is the gain that we've had. Because if we can appreciate the gain, it can give us the motivation to help us overcome and conquer the gap that we have. So if you're looking for a great book to really help shift your perspective, I think The Gap and the Gain book that we read as a team for the month of April is a great one for you to check out. So definitely check out the book, The Gap and the Gain. I think you will really benefit from it.